Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Amazing how the news cycle changes in only 24 hours. Saturday, everyone was talking about an attempted murder plot against the Orange Man, but just before that, everyone had been talking about a guy who many say got away with murder. Sure, it wasn't intentional, but the fiancé of the woman he killed is playing Fred Goldman to Alec Baldwin's OJ. So even though he's beaten the criminal rap, Alec Baldwin may have a number of civil suits that are waiting for him regardless. But I gotta tell you though, for the last 3 years, the saga of Alec Deadeye Baldwin's homicide trial has loomed. Well, actually it hasn't. It's actually been just slightly above ground in the white media. It hasn't been a huge shadow over him. They've been treating it as an on-again, off-again subject of interest once every 4 or 5 months or so. There's absolutely no dispute that Baldwin killed that woman, and while his action wasn't intentional, it also wasn't in doubt either that he did it. And yet this wasn't the trial of the century, or even the movie of the week. The white media wasn't trying to give him the Jonathan Majors treatment, much less the Jussie Smollett treatment. No breathless articles in the white media, no throngs of reporters, the mayor didn't weigh in. Oh no, we don't have TMZ giving wall-to-wall anything on this. The white media took Alec Baldwin's statements, dutifully repeated them, and then just let events play out. They weren't trying to drive the events, they weren't trying to tell the public what to think. I told you that the fix was in from the very beginning, but then again, you didn't need a crystal ball to see that one. Last year, when the first assistant director on the movie got probation, I told everyone that Baldwin's chances of getting convicted had dropped from the already slim to none category to just plain none. And the charges against Baldwin were soon dropped thereafter. Some of the brain-dead detractors out there got jolly in the behind when the prosecutors tried to resurrect the case, which they did mostly out of spite. White media reports are that apparently one of the prosecutors on the case felt that Baldwin was shooting his mouth off and she didn't like him very much to begin with, so she decided to resurrect this case, but it didn't get far because prosecutorial spite doesn't neutralize white privilege. I knew that the outcome for any would-be do-over of a trial wouldn't change the outcome because Baldwin's white privilege hadn't changed. And so the prosecutors made their lunk-headed, half-hearted attempt to try to jam him up, but it was doomed to fail from the very beginning, and it was obvious. Alec Baldwin's defense team had already presented a number of Hail Marys to try to get the case dismissed, and it was only a matter of time before one of their targets hit the mark. They presented evidence to the judge that prosecutors had taken steps to conceal the fact that the ammunition from the homicide in question originated with an external ammunition source. The bullets had been given to the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office by a retired cop from Arizona who told them that the bullets would match the fatal round. The bullets from this external source, that is. The judge looked at some of these suppressed rounds, and she determined that the rounds were similar enough to the ones that had been on the set of the day of the homicide that it could have helped Alec Baldwin's defense. And so Baldwin's lawyers said that this suppression of evidence ought to get the case thrown out, and at long last, after several prior attempts, the judge finally agreed to do it on this one. By the way, the woman who was the armorer for that movie, she was the person most responsible, or should I say irresponsible, for the gun being loaded. Well, her attorneys are now saying that since Baldwin beat the rap, they're going to file a motion to have her case dismissed too. So at long last, that white privilege is kicking into high gear. Here you have a case where a big-name Hollywood star kills a woman, and this case has all kinds of twists and turns, but nowhere does the white media try to demonize him or make him into a pariah or to attack anyone for daring to work with Deadeye Baldwin afterwards. Nothing about studios dropping him or trying to scandalize the fact that he went and finished the very movie that he had killed someone on the set of. Nothing about how he already had another movie set up before his original charges had been dismissed. Now, we already had surviving R. Kelly from Lifetime. I want to know, when do we get not surviving Alec Baldwin? Anyone want to do interviews with Kim Basinger or talk about their rocky marriage? Perhaps somebody will talk to Alec Baldwin's daughter about the kind of verbal abuse that he heaped on her. You know, I gotta wonder, if they do actually get around to making a movie about this tragedy someday, who are they going to get to play Alec Baldwin? Is it too late to cast Wyatt Earp? I'm just asking for a friend, but the double standard here is as blatant as it is intentional, and that's by design. Nate Parker actually proved his innocence in court, falsely accused of rape, put on trial by a white jury in the Deep South. They don't get any worse than that. And yet that white jury looked at this strong, athletic black man and said, you know what, we believe the black man over his white accuser. And yet you had Robin Roberts leading the charge to demonize him on behalf of the white media because they didn't like the movie that he made about Nat Turner. Jonathan Majors runs away from a white woman, and that gets wall-to-wall news. He winds up being convicted of, well, getting into an argument, I suppose. And that's all kosher. Why, Jonathan Majors, he should be run out of town on a rail. In fact, he should be in prison for life for, well, we're not sure. Meanwhile, Deadeye Baldwin kills a white woman, and the charges get dismissed not once, but twice. But hey, that's no evidence that there's a double standard. It just worked out that way. Same way it did for Kevin Spacey. Same way it does for so many others. Bill Cosby got sent to prison based on an illegal deposition introduced at trial, and even though it was obvious to both the prosecutor and the judge that this would never withstand an appeal, they wanted to see if they could get a jury to sign off on it anyway, and the jury, who didn't know any better, did. But the court knew full well the deposition was inadmissible at trial, and when the illegal conviction was predictably thrown out on appeal, there's been no consequences for either the criminal DA or the corrupt judge. The same elements from the dominant society who had been crusading to make a cause celeb out of Johnny Depp were nowhere to be seen for Cosby, but then again, their support for Depp wasn't about evidence as much as it was about maintaining a racial status quo. Alec Baldwin will inevitably be allowed to live this one down. Hell, he's already doing it now. Just like Rob Lowe and his having had sex with a 16-year-old. Mel Gibson is recorded engaged in a racist anti-black rant, and not only does Hollywood let him come back to work, they don't even mention that. They only mention that he made some off-color remarks about Jews, but that's it. The anti-black stuff was totally ignored. It's a double standard, but one that the Negroes in Hollywood know that they better not call out. None of them dare to mention the double standard from the courts, and they certainly won't mention the double standard from the white media or these studios either. When you're black and you get accused of something, it becomes a foot race to see who can announce that they're going to drop you from their studio schedule first, which talent agency can be the first to announce they're dropping you as a client, which advertisers can be the first to announce that they're dropping your endorsement deal. It becomes some sort of sick competition. But when you're not black, it just becomes a game of wait and see. Black celebrities already know all this. But they also know that it's better for them to be disinvited from the cheese and croissant circuit and the parties in the hills rather than to have never been invited to them at all. As far as they're concerned, it's more than worth it to roll the dice. The people who are the targets of this double standard are doing nothing to stop it, which is why black celebrities can never be effective partners in black empowerment. That's why you don't see us campaigning for their support. I would say that this should be a warning to them, but they've been getting warnings since the beginning of time, and ignoring them too. Paul Mooney was so right. Negroes in Hollywood are the most dense when it comes to recognizing white media racism, even when they're the targets of it. Their ability to deny and overlook anti-black racism, especially against other black celebs, is unparalleled. So their occasional phony peeps of discontent about how black talent gets treated in Hollywood doesn't really count for much. And since it doesn't seem to bother them, it won't bother us either. Well, there is one thing for sure. Whatever project Deadeye Baldwin's working on next, I know he can't wait to get shooting again. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Bruce Day, Understanding, Going Down Slow, DSC Bland, and Delvian Burton. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.